Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Don't Get Caught Assuming Protecting Microsoft Office 365 Data webinar with Arcserve and CCSI. Today we'll be talking about protecting your Office 365 data. Just a quick agenda. We're going to have a quick about. I promise you it will be really quick about CCSI and Arcserve. We'll do an overview of the prevalence of Office 365 in today's marketplace, protecting Office 365 data, how to make Office 365 protection a reality, cloud backup, and health checks. And at the end, we'll have a nice short question and answer. Speaking today is myself, Joe Goldberg. I'm the Cloud Practice Manager at CCSI, and Matt Knudsen, who is the Manager of Solutions Marketing and Enablement at Arcserve. So just really quick about CCSI. CCSI has been in business for 40 years, and we provide infrastructure and data center services like networking, routing, switching. We do third-party maintenance for people that are local to us. We can even come on site and do break fix and priority response. We have a full cloud practice with, we are cloud agnostic, AWS, Google, Azure. We do containers, Kubernetes, other microservices, disaster recovery as a service, backup as a service, and a full suite of observability products. We have a full 24/7 SOC and cybersecurity practice where we can protect against ransomware, DDoS, security vulnerability, and we have a service called Threat Protect, which is kind of an all-encompassed infrastructure cybersecurity protection service. As I said before, we have a 24/7 NOC and SOC where we can provide all sorts of managed services, and our NOC and SOC are SOC 2 Type 2 compliant. So feel free to all of you banking and insurance customers. Next, yep, there we go. And now I'll turn it over to the wonderful folks at Arcserve.
Great, thanks, Joe. I just wanted to briefly just step through just a little bit about Arcserve and our portfolio, and then we'll get into specifics about Microsoft Office 365 and some areas we want to just highlight related to the service itself, and get into some more details around the data protection aspects. So Arcserve is the most experienced data protection provider. We are in a category of 1. We've been at the data protection space and been focused on that for several decades. So we really look to cover the entirety of an infrastructure. And you can see from just the solutions that we bring to market are focused on around obviously the data protection space, but we also have business continuity solutions as well. So whether that need is from a protection standpoint on premises or in the cloud or a hybrid cloud, we have software-based solutions, we have appliances, and we have cloud-based solutions. So we really run the entire gamut of data protection solutions to help organizations ensure that their information is backed up, but more importantly, that business continuity to make sure that businesses stay operational and functional. We all know we live in a 24/7 society, and people and companies just expect access to the information they want at any time. So here you can see just a listing of some of our products. Today we'll focus specifically on Cloud Backup for Office 365. I certainly encourage you to visit the Arcserve website and learn more. You can contact CCSI as well, and they can provide any additional information on other products that we offer. So from an Office 365 standpoint, there's a couple key points that I just wanted to mention and it probably comes as no surprise to those of you on this webinar that Microsoft Office 365 is the top business application. It continues to go through tremendous growth as organizations continue to move from traditional on-premises based software to more cloud-based software and SaaS-based applications. That growth just continues. So we know from an Office standpoint, from the legacy standpoint, it's always been around productivity, and the same thing continues with Office 365. The interesting thing to note about Office 365 is just from the sheer volume of the number of users that are using it worldwide. Over 350 million Office users worldwide, and that just continues to grow at a tremendous rate. About half the companies use Microsoft Office 365. But what's interesting is when you really start to look at the data protection strategy and the offerings in terms of protection of your data and the ability to back it up and restore information in the event of any sort of loss of information. That's what I wanted to get into today, because 92% of companies actually don't have an Office 365 backup solution in place. There's a lot of assumptions around there, and those are some of the things that I really wanted to clarify from an assumption versus reality standpoint. So let's just take a look at assumption number one. Organizations are constantly creating content for projects, for individual use, and so organizations repeatedly can refer back to older information for a project or refer back to it from a review standpoint as perhaps new items are worked on and they want to just look at recaps from other projects. So just take an example here. An organization wants to look at project information that might have been on OneDrive or SharePoint Online from several years ago. Now, the assumption is that that information is constantly being backed up from an Office 365 standpoint. And I'll get into some of the particulars here in just a bit. But on the surface, it's really important to note that if someone goes in and deletes some of that information, and unless there's a data protection plan in place, by default, information goes to a recycle bin in Office 365 and can stay there for a certain amount of time, typically 90 days, and then it's purged from the recycle bin. So unless that information was actively backed up, that information's lost. There's no way to obtain that information. And we've heard from countless organizations that have faced similar issues before putting in place a data protection plan, because there was just that assumption that, well, if it's a SaaS-based application, it must be backed up. And that's not the case. I'll look at two other assumptions, and then we'll get into some particulars of the actual service itself of Office 365 and the expectations that are set there. Another example is organization that might fall victim to an email phishing scam. They could receive an email. It looks like a legitimate email. They click on the email. They may provide some personal information. They need to verify. Perhaps it looks like something from HR that they need to submit some documentation, and they go through the process. They click submit, and they realize, wait a second, I'm not sure if this is indeed something that I should have submitted. And you'd be surprised how many people fall for phishing attacks, even in light of all the different solutions that are in place specifically for preventing those types of issues. But as we know, cyber criminals are always advancing their approaches and ways of which they're trying to get people to provide that type of confidential information. And so there again, this is another thing that there's an assumption around Office 365 that you're safeguarded against external cyber threats. And again, that's not the case. So if there's a loss of data related to your Office 365 content, the onus is really on you to be able to provide, to have access to a way to restore that information. So if you don't have that in place, then any external security attacks or data breaches really can wreak havoc on your particular organization. The last one I wanted to mention is just from really a legal hold standpoint. So there's also this assumption that Office 365 has built-in litigation hold options. Now, in the higher end tiers of Office 365, there are some elements around that, but the vast majority of what businesses use from an Office 365 standpoint don't have that capability in place. It's an extra package that you have to buy. It's an extra tier that you have to get in terms of the complexity and the solution itself. So there are a couple different things to keep in mind here. One, with a data protection plan in place, you have a backup, obviously, of those emails, and you can certainly retain those from a compliance and governance standpoint. We actually do also offer, in addition to Office 365 Cloud Backup for Office 365, we do have an email archiving and an email archiving cloud solution as well. So if you want a full-fledged litigation hold solution, that's another offering that we have. But as it relates to 365, I really wanted to just go into now just a few particulars around making that data protection a reality for Office 365. So looking at this particular, well, these two charts that you see on screen here on the left, these are the three main areas that really Microsoft focuses on from an Office 365 standpoint. One, the infrastructure and the maintenance of the Office 365 services. Any hardware or software failures, Microsoft focuses their time, energy, and resources to make sure that the availability of Office 365 reaches as many nines as possible, as close to 100% of availability as they can achieve. From a user standpoint, and this just highlights a few areas for consumers to think about and businesses to think about. I mean, these are areas that really the onus is on that user in terms of making sure that their information is protected, making sure that if there's any regulatory compliance that needs to happen, safeguarding any business services or the content that's utilized within Office 365. And with this chart, you can just look at, this is directly from Microsoft, and you can see they make it very clear the responsibility is always retained by the customer on their data. So if you just simply look at this chart, you can see across really any of the offerings that they have, whether software as a service, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, or on premises, the information and data and the protection of that, they make it very clear that it's a customer's responsibility to do that. And so as you look through the different areas in terms of their offerings and in terms of network or data center or accounts and identities, you know, that can change in terms of where some of that responsibility lies. But once you work your way up towards the information and data, then it's clearly something that is focused specifically on the end user and on the consumer themselves. So how do you gain control and eliminate data loss in Office 365? Well, first and foremost, you know, eliminate any Office 365 security gaps, just making sure that you have a safeguard in place to make sure that that information is being backed up. You really want to make sure that you're protecting, for many organizations, what is their key communication tool, because it's one thing to back up information from Office 365, but you really want to look at a solution that puts in place the ability to restore that information back to Office 365, because ultimately you want to keep access to that information within what employees and vendors and others expect where to access that information. As long as you keep that information up to date, as long as you have that information backed up, then it really allows you as an organization to have that peace of mind knowing that, yes, we can continue to utilize Office 365. We know we have this information protected. In the event we run into some sort of issue, we know we can restore that information back into Office 365. So you hear the term Office 365, you're probably wondering just in terms of, you know, what are some of those key components that make up that Office 365, and how does a cloud backup solution for Office 365 really fit into that? So from a key component standpoint, it's really that total protection for Exchange Online, OneDrive for Business, and SharePoint Online. These are the three core elements that many businesses worldwide use on an ongoing basis. Exchange Online obviously is the email portion of Office 365. OneDrive is typically where organizations are sharing a lot of documents and storing personal documents. And SharePoint Online obviously is just like what SharePoint used to be on premises, an online repository of areas where you can store files and information related to projects. Specifically, as it relates to Arcserve Cloud Backup for Office 365, is the protection of those three elements. But then also, we have partnered with Sophos, a leader in the cybersecurity space, to really include a critical cybersecurity component to make sure that those backups of the Office 365 information are retained, are free from any malware, are secure from any ransomware issues. And so from the offering itself, there's a couple things just to keep in mind related to the Arcserve Cloud Backup for Office 365 offering. It's a completely managed service, so there isn't any onus on the customer to do any configurations or setup in a cloud environment for it. We work with our partners. In this case, we would work with CCSI to ensure that your Office 365 information is backed up. You have the peace of mind knowing that it's backed up. You have the cybersecurity component in place. And that's a fully managed service, so you can actually access a view of your backups of Office 365 directly right within UDP Console, our core backup and data protection software. So the last point I just wanted to mention here, and then I'll cover some additional information on the next slide, is we've really tried to set up simple, cost-effective subscription-based licensing for the offer itself. So we offer it in 3 tiers, 50 to 500 users, and this is simply based on the number of users that you would have as an organization that are utilizing Office 365, 50 to 500, 501 to 1,000, or 1,001 plus. One of the things that we've done is, as we've brought this product to market, is really taking a look at what we've seen and working with our customers and what they have for typical storage amounts that are used related to an Office 365 account to understand how much egress would be necessary related to that. So the egress is an important thing to think of, because as you look at different competitive products, many times they'll sell a license related to an Office 365 backup option, but it may not be in the cloud to allow that restore to happen from cloud to cloud. Many times organizations don't want to have to manage an on-premises backup of their Office 365 information. If they are going to store it in the cloud, many times with competitive products, the egress is not calculated into that cost. So if an organization has to start to restore files back into Office 365, every time that they're obtaining information from the cloud and restoring that, they're going to pay egress costs. So we've rolled a very ample amount of egress into the license cost itself, 15 gigabytes per user per year. Typically, we've seen most users tend to have 5 gigs or less of storage space that's utilized across their Office 365 account. So you're always going to have those power users that may go above and beyond the 15 gigs, but the vast majority will be well within that 15 gig egress amount, which makes it very easy for IT admins to understand the cost related to Cloud Backup for Office 365, because the egress is included, the cloud storage is included, the UDP licenses for cloud are included, and even out of the box, there's a 1-year retention that's included as well. Of course, there's options if you want to add additional egress, or you foresee the need to go beyond what your particular capacity is. It is important to note here, if you just take the case of 15 gigs per user, it's the amount of, and that's an average. So if you had 100 users, you'd have 1.5 terabytes worth of egress that could be utilized to do any restores across all of your Office 365 users. So if you stay within that, then you have a very predictable cost related to your Office 365 backup. Just a couple quick highlights in terms of features, capabilities I wanted to point out. It is a true cloud-to-cloud backup offering. You'll see others that will be a backup to on-premises. This makes it very convenient to not have to allocate storage space on premises. There isn't software you have to maintain on premises. It's entirely managed from the cloud to just make it very easy to do cloud-to-cloud backups. I did also want to point out restore, and this is a really important thing as well, is I talked about the restore back to Office 365, but granular recovery. So when you're restoring a particular, if you had to restore a mailbox, or if you had to restore a collection of documents, you can pick and choose the content that you would want to restore back in to Office 365. So you don't have to always default to a full restore if you wanted to, or if you needed to restore some information back there. So that gives you that flexibility. I touched on the cybersecurity component. So there's a couple things that I wanted to just mention. Is there is an ongoing process that will manage the scanning of content as it's added into the cloud from Office 365. And once the information is in the cloud, there's an ongoing protection of the content while it's in the cloud to look at processes in that cloud environment, protect the environment itself. So from an IT admin standpoint, you have complete peace of mind that that information is secure in the cloud. Then from a management standpoint, I mentioned earlier, it is through our UDP console. So you have that view to be able to look at your backup Office 365 information, and you have clear view in terms of the amount of information that's backed up, and can look at information related to your Office 365 backups. Just a quick high-level sort of architecture overview. I mentioned the three core components with Exchange Online, SharePoint, and OneDrive. The web console I just mentioned in terms of that view, so there isn't any active management as an IT admin that you would have to manage directly in the cloud. It's all within a UDP console that you can view from simply logging into that console and having view of that information in the cloud. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Joe. I know there's a few additional points he wants to talk through, and then we can certainly open it up to any questions that you have and answer any questions related to Arcserve Cloud Backup for Office 365 or certainly any of the offering and capabilities from CCSI.
Helps if you unmute. Thank you very much.
Sure.
I just wanted to mention that we are offering to attendees of the webinar a health check. So if you're looking for a health check on your backup environment today, please touch base with your CCSI account managers, and we can get that scheduled for you. For all health checks that are made before August 5th, we'll give out a $100 Amazon gift card. For health checks scheduled before August 21st, we'll pay out a $50 Amazon gift card. So I guess with that, are there any questions? I do have one question here. Somebody asked if you could use this as a kind of a last resort against ransomware, especially for like SharePoint, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that integration with Sophos, it really helps prevent ransomware issues around your backups. So as we know, one of the core things that many cyber criminals try to do is they try to go after backups. They will first try to go through core data within an organization, and then they really try to get to backups because they know if they get to the core data and the backups, that puts an organization in a really tough situation because now they don't have something that they can restore from. The addition of the Sophos component really gives that peace of mind to know that, and I mentioned how it will look at the information as it's going into the cloud, and then there's an ongoing monitoring of that information to make sure that that information is secure. So there's a couple points I just wanted to briefly mention about that. So with the Sophos technology, there is ongoing malware detection, ongoing ransomware prevention, and from a technology standpoint, there, in addition to signature-based updates, there is signature-less-based updates as well, and that's available through AI technology to look at things that haven't even been formally identified as issues and a signature deployed related to it. They can see anomalies related to file structure, related to the environment itself, and then put in place, there's an option called WhiteGuard and CryptoGuard within Sophos that really give that IT admin that peace of mind to know that their backups are safe, their backups are secure, and in the event they need to do a restore back into content from the cloud backup to Office 365, they have that peace of mind knowing that that information is free from any malware, and they haven't experienced any ransomware events against their backups.
Thank you. That was really good. Somebody else has asked, do you have an appliance that includes protection for on-prem Exchange and Office 365? So they must be running a hybrid environment.
Sure, absolutely. So we do have a couple different offerings that are available there. We have our UDP software that can be deployed on premises, and backups that can include Office 365 and Exchange, as well as we do have a number of customers that utilize our Arcserve appliances. And our Arcserve appliances include the Sophos technology as well. So it's a rack mountable appliance that you can be up and running in as little as 15 minutes to start your backups, and has the complete data protection solution included, as well as the integrated cybersecurity component. All necessary hardware and software is all pre-configured. You simply point it to the resources that you want to back up, and you don't have to allocate any storage space on your own servers or compute power. It's all included within the appliance.
That sounds great. I believe that's all the questions we have right now. I'd like to thank everybody for attending, and thank the really good folks over at Arcserve for taking the time to educate us all. And I look forward to our next webinar. Thank you very much, and have a great day.